Welcome back. Illinois prosecutors are piling up evidence against a former game show contestant now accused of killing his estranged wife during a bitter divorce. Police believe Evan broke into Savannah's home in February and he got beat up by Savannah 14 times. The prosecution says Becky told friends she was scared of what the defendant might do to her to get custody of their children. His defense team argues that the case is, quote, dripping with reasonable doubt and that a divorce alone is not enough to convict their client. On Monday morning, a former co-worker and friend of Becky's testified about messages between the two of them and what Becky had to say about Tim's push for full custody.
After you asked Becky, are you safe? Becky said to you, I told you your jaw would drop. Is that right?
Yes.
And then she continued, I feel safe right now. I'm super nervous for when this ends. If he doesn't get his mind, I feel he may literally lose his mind. Is that what she said to you?
He said if he doesn't get his way, I feel he may literally lose his mind, yes.
He wants everything, wants sole custody of the kids, wants all the money, all the assets, wants me to suffer.
Yes.
As it continued, did she say, but I've had some serious PTSD with all this and the things I found out. Plus, I've had not one, but two co-workers get murdered by their exes in the last year, which has totally made me a nervous Nellie.
Yes.
Terry, several witnesses testified that Rebecca feared her husband. Were they under any, legal obligation to report that?
Not in the state of Illinois, unless they are what's called a mandatory reporter. So someone in school, if there's sexual assault and you know about it, you are required to report that. But here, even if you think they are required to report a crime, because some states do say, like in Texas, that you have to report a crime that results in a death. That doesn't exist here. There is no crime. Right now, she's just talking to these various people about her fear of her husband. It's not as though he's done anything that's illegal, so there's no crime there. But I do think that the defense on the cross-examination of several of these witnesses was trying to imply, look, you didn't report it because there was no crime. You didn't tell her to do anything because there was no crime. So I think he's trying to establish that there's nothing here.
Matt, the evidence is stacking up against Bliefnick, including shell casings found at the scene, and the biggest one for me was the Google searches found on his computer. But how would you defend a case like that?
Well, number one, with regard to the shell casings, certainly there's shell casings at the scene of the crime and shell casings in the home. We know there's a 9mm gun that apparently was not recovered. So did someone have access to that gun in the house and commit this crime? Obviously, the Google searches are very damning in this case. He's looking for things that would be indicative of someone who's planning a murder or wants to plan in some way to hide it. So there's problems with this case, but there are things that you can do to defend it.
Yeah, Google searches. They seem to be sometimes the best detective in a lot of these cases, just based on what a lot of these defendants and eventually sometimes convicts end up searching. But we'll see how this case continues. The Florida Sheriff's deputy accused of hiding instead of taking action during the Parkland school shooting 5 years ago was in court again on Tuesday before jury selection gets underway. 17 people were killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Scott Peterson was heavily criticized for apparently running away instead of helping. He's charged with child neglect and culpable negligence. Jury selection is expected to start on Wednesday with a trial next week. The judge once again heard arguments about whether the jurors will be able to visit the school building in question. The judge said he'll have a decision on that by June 5th. On Tuesday, the judge explained what will happen next in the court process, as well as the consequences Peterson could face if the jury finds him guilty.
Please state your full name.
Scott Peterson.
How old are you?
60.
How far did you go to school?
I have a bachelor's in science degree in criminal justice.
You read and understand the English language?
I do.
Are you presently under the influence of any drugs, medication, or alcohol?
No.
Have you ever been treated for a mental illness?
No.
Are you taking any prescription medication right now from a psychologist or a psychiatrist?
No.
How are you feeling this morning?
I'm doing as well as expected, Your Honor.
I understand your head is clear this morning,
Yes.
and you understand what's going on this morning.
Yes.
All right, so sir, you've been here through most of these proceedings, whether it be on Zoom or in person now. You understand tomorrow I'm going to start talking to citizens regarding their ability to serve with a prospective schedule, and then from that group, we're going to get a jury selected, maybe even as soon as next week. And as soon as we do get a jury selected, we're going to start the trial the next day. You with me so far?
Yes.
Okay. So, sir, the maximum exposure that you have here on all counts, should the jury convict you as charged, is 95 years in Florida State Prison, followed by 1 year and 60 days in the Broward County Jail. Do you understand the charges you're facing and the maximum possible penalties?
I do.
Scott Peterson's attorney says when Peterson approached him, he wasn't actually sure he wanted to represent him. But he told Law&Crime Network when he heard Peterson's side, he started to get a better understanding. We spoke with him about the day of the shooting.
There's a reason why we're asking the judge to bring the jurors to the scene. It wasn't until I got there that I literally said out loud, "Are you kidding me?" I told the prosecutor, I go, "Get over here." Like almost like he was keeping this from me. The building is nothing like you can imagine. It is 73 yards long from one end to the other. We're talking about 3/4 of a football field, and it's very high. You can't imagine how big it is. My client was investigating a firecracker complaint on the east side of the building. So he starts to approach the door. He never got to the door. He never opened the door because, boom, shots were fired on the entire other side of the building. The door's open. The shots are going out. It sounded like it was coming from outside. Every single witness, even the most right-wing state witnesses, say it was very reasonable for my client to believe from hearing those initial shots that they were coming from outside and not from inside the building.
All right, joining me now are my co-host, former trial attorney Terry Austin, and special guest, criminal defense attorney Matt Mangino. Matt, one of the charges against Peterson is child neglect, but could that be a stretch for the prosecution?
Well, Brian, under Florida law, in order to prove that there is child neglect, the person who's charged with neglect has to be a caregiver. And so that's an interesting theory because the prosecution is going to have to prove that a sheriff's deputy, a school police officer is a caregiver for the students there. And if the prosecution can meet that threshold of proving, in fact, that the officer is a caregiver, then they might have a shot at this neglect of children. But as you said, it is a bit of a stretch. It has two components to it that the prosecution has to prove, and it may have a difficult time with that very first prong of the test.
Yeah, my understanding it's about duty, and the question as to whether or not he has a duty to them. He's a security guard at the school, so maybe. Well, the judge is going to determine, Terry, if a jury can view the inside of the school, the outside of the school, or even both. What's your view on the issue?
Well, I think if the judge decides they should view the outside, the jury should probably view the inside as well. Listening to the defense attorney there, it really does make you understand you have to see Peterson's perspective. And in order to do that, I think the jury has to be outside of that building. But he's charged with having, caused the deaths essentially of the people on the third floor. So I do think that they need to go inside to see what the layout was for first floor, second floor, and third floor in order to come to some sort of educated decision there.
Yeah, the difference of floors makes a lot of sense. You sure you don't want to join the team and help out in the defense? Well, switching gears to a wild story out of Florida. A woman wants to know why deputies are arresting her after she parked her SUV in the ocean. Take a look at this body camera video.
I'm not sure. I was the driver and they kind of stopped us and they said that we almost hit a child. I didn't think that we did. But that's what they told us.
Yeah, the people are down here because you can't drive on this part of the beach.
I'm so sorry. We were driving from New Smyrna and we got over here and we were just trying to turn around. We didn't think that we could do a U-turn around here, so we were trying to keep going.
Take a look in the car real quick. You have your license on you?
Yes, I do. It's in my phone, but it's in the car.
I would get your phone out of there. Your car's not going to be moving for a while.
Okay, can I get it?
Yeah, go get your license and your phone. going to go to jail. Okay?
No.
All right, so you can go with her, or you can stay out and get her out of jail with a bond.
And why am I going to jail?
So right now, I think you're driving under the influence.
Okay.
All right?
No.
Then we got reckless with multiple people over here. You were inches away from multiple people. Okay?
I can't have her.
Sure, go ahead and turn around for me. Jump me back.
Oh my God, please.
Yes. Sorry.
What do I do now?
Call the Volusia County Branch Jail to get her bond. It's not, she'll have a bond.